Hello and welcome to Football Manager 2023 Roleplay, a project where we create a player using the FM editor. We give him a potential ability of 200 and see if he will become the greatest American footballer ever. Now, unlike many videos on YouTube, we will not be managing a club and we will simply watch the progression of this player, Henry Marshall, from the age of 15 to hopefully his eventual retirement. This is a world building exercise. We provide the background and story of the player, and we let FM23 provide the drama. As you can see, Henry is now 17 years old. His current rating started at 104. He is at 120 on the way to 200. And we started playing at the current date of May 24th, 2024. And you can see that is indeed the time period up here. And when we last left him behind, Henry was feeling a little bit besieged. His manager at Atlanta United, Wilfried Nancy, is pegged by the press for firing. And Marshall was invited to a dinner by the team's chairman, Sam Herrera, to find out what was going on. After that, a phony press article claimed that Henry was unhappy about his contract. Marshall expected his manager to be fired soon, but Wilfried Nancy has surprisingly held on. Now, before we talk about some of these games, let's highlight an event in this alternate history of 2024. In May, NASA conducts the first human flight of the Orion multi-purpose crew vehicle. This test Artemis 2 follows the uncrewed Artemis 1 in 2022 and the Earth orbiting prototype in 2014. These missions form part of the agency's longer-term plan for sending humans to Mars. Now, I also promised that we'd highlight some of the players of Atlanta United. So our player spotlight is Luiz Araújo, the 27-year-old Brazilian captain of Atlanta United. Other teams he's played for have been Sao Paulo and the French team Lille. He's getting $3.9 million a year. So he is, and we'll see if we can find him here, he is the highest paid player on the team, right there. He helped Atlanta win the Supporters' Shield in 2022, but the club expected MVP level performances for what they were paying, and his flashes of brilliance are quenched by his turnover rate. The Athletic magazine named him an MLS top 11 underperformer. He is married to digital influencer Ingrid Cantorini. And now let's start looking at some of the games that have been played as we move up the calendar to May 24th and kind of show you what's going on here. And get to our social feed, which is where we can actually see the games that have been played. And actually, there is one that got cut off in the feed. This was a game against Dallas on May 11th, a match between two 11th place teams of the conferences. And on the 11th, 11th place versus 11th place, and it resulted in a 1-1 tie. Marshall left the pitch in the second minute with a minor injury. And as you can see, he injured his calf in training. That took Marshall out for 3 weeks. Mark Hughes was fired by the Philadelphia Union. I don't know if we're going to see that here. It's probably somewhere. But anyway, Mark Hughes was fired by the Philadelphia Union after falling in the last place in the Eastern Conference. David Wagner, who was fired by LAFC earlier this year, he will eventually take over. And Richard Jerez is going to take over at Colorado. Now the game on the 14th here against Vancouver, it was a high point for Atlanta. They won that game 3-0. 3 different scores. And here we have Marcelino Moreno. He scores in the 12th minute. He is also the player of the game. Too many fouls from Vancouver. And as we can see, Tolkien here now replacing Marshall in the back line. The preliminary squad for the Copa America was announced. And Marshall was left out of that announcement. He will not be playing Copa America. Maybe these chances are very, very slim. Maybe if someone, and the USA team backline gets hurt, but Marshall only has one USA cap to his name. The match against Chicago, number 9 Atlanta United versus number 7 Chicago. That ended in a 3-1 victory for Atlanta. As we can see, on level terms, reduced to 10 men. They were unable to avoid the defeat in Atlanta. Edward Mosquera's penalty goal here in the 84th minute. That pretty much clinched it for Atlanta. You can see Tolkien here had a 7.0, had an assist. Henry's going to sweat a little bit because of that. Greg Berhalter, he was fired by Orlando City. And poor performance. Atlanta City was knocked out of the Open Cup by Tampa Bay. That pretty much sealed his fate. Greg Varney was fired by the 12th place LA Galaxy. And this is another case of a coach getting canned because his team performed both poorly in the MLS and got embarrassed. They were knocked out of the U.S. Open Club by Louisville. That was last year. So people remember that loss, and now LA Galaxy also looking for a new coach. In the meantime, Marcelino Moreno, he was second in running for the MLS Player of the Week. A lot of speculation about this one. Erkan Kara of Atlantic City won it, but there's Marcelino here. And Marcelino shows up here. Right there with Martin Pace, the goalkeeper. And I think he comes in with nope. It's just him and Pace. They're the only guys on the team of the week here. And we go to the U.S. Open Cup on the 21st. Charlotte, they win here in the 5th round, which is when we're down to 16 teams. It's actually a 1-1 draw with Charlotte Football Club. And Araujo, he left the pitch in the 99th minute. Let's see if we can find out what it was in the medical report. It was a bruised ankle. That dropped Atlanta down to 10 men. It went down to penalty. It would eventually go down to penalty kicks. And Atlanta would finish this one 3-1. Balogun, Ibarra, Abram. There you go. So U.S. Open will now draw Atlanta United against Real Salt Lake. Here's the quarterfinal. North Carolina, the only team that is not an MLS team that made it to the quarterfinal of that cup game. So this should take us to the end. And now let's see how far forward we can move. We are now back. Lots of news in the coaching front. Let's talk here. Caleb Porter. I don't know if we can find him here. You can probably find him here somewhere. Caleb Porter will take charge at Orlando City. We have Fernando Ortiz, who was formerly with, let's go look at him, America in the Liga MX for several years. He is now moving over to the LA Galaxy. Look at the game that took place on May 26th. This is Real Salt Lake. And that game ended with a come-from-behind victory. 1-2, as we can see here. It is an 85th minute goal by Moreno. That steals the 3 points. There's John Tolkien having another good game in the back four in Henry's spot. Has he earned the starting position now? Now, Marshall should be ready to come back to return for that next game at Charlotte. Later, Henry Kessler and Edwin Mosquera would get MLS Team of the Week selections. The next game was on the 29th. That one was at Charlotte. Kanga suffering an injury. Not so good for Atlanta United. Charlotte eases to victory on that one. It was an 0-2 loss, and Marshall was back. The problem was he was back on the bench. So, unfortunately, as I said, showed Wilfried Kanga, the target forward, he goes out for 3 weeks with a foot injury. Now, before the game against Seattle, if we can find her or not, Atlanta United's Marcelino Moreno, he wins MLS Player of the Month. A lot of great performances, and he dedicates that award to his head coach, Wilfried Nancy, claiming he could not have won that award without his help. Now, this news shines strong positive focus on Nancy. And could it be that Wilfried Nancy has turned the corner and kept his job? Next game, we go here to a 1-0 victory over Seattle at the beginning of September. And in this game, sixth place Atlanta, eighth place Seattle. Captain Luis Araujo, he scores in the 77th minute. And Seattle was pretty much dominated. For the second game in a row, Marshall is an unused substitute, and he's wondering now, if either Tolkien is taking his job from him or if he's in the doghouse, with Nancy one way or the other. As it turns out, deep line playmaker Jackson Ewell, he was injured in training. He suffered a concussion. 90minutes.com. He is out to that game. We have a U.S. Open Cup quarterfinals game. This one will be at Real Salt Lake, and they will win that one 2-0. Only 9,212 people in attendance during that game. But it is a 2-0 win. Atlanta United, we see 12 corner attempts to Real Salt Lake's 1 corner attempt. And goals by Balogun and Captain Araujo, they seal this game up early. Marshall is on the bench, unused, and he's starting to wonder if that's where he's just going to end up staying. We'll move on to the next game. This is the 8th game at New York City. And New York City actually takes that one. Atlanta loses 1-0. 36% possession in that game. Atlanta gets bogged down with lots of fouls. They never get a rhythm. Henry Marshall is back in this game, and he does score a 6.9 rating, but he needs to do better to score, to secure his possession. Now, Atlanta now plays in the next game Toronto FC. Atlanta at this point, they were about 7th in they were actually 7th at the time in the Eastern Conference. It's number 1 Toronto, and that one turned out to be a null draw. 41,000 in attendance during that game. Marshall starts, but he has a horrible game. 6-2. In here, he's damn lucky that Toronto FC couldn't find a goal during the entire game to save its life. This was a snooze fest of a game, and particularly a snooze fest for a team like Atlanta United, which is barely above, mid-table. And the next big rumor, if we can find it here, is this Lozano? Yes, they are hoping to pick up Puebla's Nader Lozano and add him to the team. He is a 30-year-old center back. One of the problems, however, Puebla has been relegated. He wants to leave Pueblo in the wake of the relegation. They would be unable to replace him because their transfer window is already closed. Therefore, Los Camateros' big decision to make whether they're going to let Lozano walk off to Atlanta. And that takes us to June 19th. And now we'll start moving forward a little bit more. Let's actually see how well Atlanta is actually doing in Major League Soccer. Let's see where everybody is in Major League Soccer. Uh, about 22, 23 games have been played here. We have Toronto, New York City, Charlotte, Inter Miami, Red Bulls, Montreal, and Nashville. And here's Atlanta United in eighth place, same as they were last year on the outside looking in. DC United at 15 down in the 15 slot. In the West Conference, Houston, Austin, Vancouver, Real Salt Lake, Portland, Colorado, LAFC. Its best contender is Minnesota United, FC Dallas in last place. And we are back, and you can see on the calendar we are now up to the 5th of July, 2034. Let's take you through some of the next games. Up next is going to be the 22nd. This was a game at Toronto. Uh, um, Atlanta United had back-to-back games against the number one team in the Eastern Conference. This one is in Toronto, and the result is a 2-0 victory for Atlanta United. And maybe having Marshall here at the wing and Tolkien here at center back. They both had good games. Hayes has an 8.2 game. Great defense. Carrasquilla with a goal. Araujo with an assist. It all seemed to work out very, very well for Atlanta United. Hayes' 8.2 rating. He was the man of the match, so to speak. Paez and Alberto Carrasquilla, they would later be named to the MLS Team of the Week. And speaking of John Tolkien, we will see that New York City wanted to snatch him up, making a new move for him. Liga MX team Cruz Azul would later make an official bid for him that would be rejected by Atlanta United. Now, I want to note at this time, most of the MLS teams have played 23 or 24 games, but Atlanta has only played 20 games, so their position might be stronger than it appears. We go on to the 29th of July, number 7 Atlanta against number 6 in the Eastern Conference, CF Montreal. That went in with a 2-1 victory for Atlanta. And Kessler's goal in the 75th minute. This will put Atlanta over the top on that one. Marshall's game was a crap 6-3. Tolkien does a little bit better here, as you can see. Kanga with the goal up there. Atlanta did have a lot more chances to score than Montreal through all the corners, I think, and that's probably what made the difference in this particular game. In Atlanta's last 5 home games, by the way, they've had 4 wins and 1 draw. Here is some big news. This news comes out of Burnley, and Burnley is a Premier League squad, as it turns out, in this alternate universe, the English Premier League, and they make an offer for Edwin Mascara. It is accepted. They've accepted a $4.4 million bid from him. Could go up to $5.5 million. Other interest from Dallas Galaxy and Austin FC, but only Burnley has actually made an offer. MLS Team of the Week news: Atlanta's Franco Ibarra, Henry Kessler. They will both be named to MLS Team of the Week. The League's Cup is drawn on July 3rd. As you can see, you have 3 teams here. A American team, Atlanta United, a Canadian team, Vancouver, and a Mexican team from the Liga MX, that is Pumas. And those games will take place later in July. Christian Latanzio is fired by FC Dallas. FC Dallas has basically been lingering either at the bottom or near the bottom of the Western Conference pretty much the entire year. We'll go on to 7-3. Atlanta was in 6th place for this game, and Philadelphia was in 10. It was 3-2. It was a real struggle. At one time, Atlanta was down to 9 men on the field. 4 Atlanta players left the pitch with injuries. The most serious injuries were here in the back line. Marshall in the 13th minute had a gash in his leg. He will be out for 3 to 6 days. But the more serious injury was to Tolkien with the hamstring injury. It'll leave him sidelined for 5 weeks. Araujo, as you can see here, he scored 2 goals, including the game winner over in the 86th minute. This is Atlanta's 5th home win in their last 6 games. So let's go ahead and look at the standings in Major League Soccer at this point. Let's see, Toronto, Charlotte, New York City, the Red Bulls, Inter Miami. There is Atlanta United in 6th place, about 9 points away from the lead. Montreal right behind them in 35th, and Chicago Fire close by. DC United at the bottom. Austin, Houston, Colorado, Real Salt Lake, Portland, Vancouver, LA Football Club, then Minnesota and St. Louis City. Backing him up here. Note that Atlanta United, as I said previously, 22 games played. That is the fewest number of games played in the MLS. That's the end of this episode. We've already gone on too long. Anyway, if you like what you hear or see, make a comment or hit the like and or subscribe button. Until next time.